I've been making process videos of my art and posting them on Instagram. And those videos are really popular, people love them. And more significant than them just being entertaining, I frequently, I would say daily, get some sort of message from someone who says that those videos help them to manage their own anxiety or their grief or their pain or their fear. And that is like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's like if I could have a goal, it'd be like, wow, my videos, like, oh, it gives me, oh my gosh, my videos make people feel better. They help people to deal with their emotional lives. Like, that's astonishing to me. And what's also interesting is that I make the videos, or I should say I make the paintings, and I happen to record the process, but I make the paintings to do the same for myself. I need like an hour painting hexagons or something just to chill out. There's a great quote, I think it's by Brene Brown, who says, every single person has a story that will break your heart. That's totally true. We're all just trying to get by. So, I want to tell my own story because I think it's important. Not because I need sympathy or because I have like some desire to expose myself and my pain to the world, but because I think maybe in this world of super glossy internet everything, getting a little real is helpful. So if you follow me on Instagram, you may know that a few years ago I lost my daughter Esther at birth. It all started with a routine ultrasound around 20 weeks. We went in thinking we get to find out the gender and found out that she had chromosomal abnormalities and would very likely not survive past birth. So that moment changed my life. And I carried her for the rest of the pregnancy, which was almost till full term. And then my water broke. I had what was probably a placental abruption, where the placenta pulls away from the lining of the womb. And there was a lot of bleeding, and it was very scary, and there was an ambulance, and it was super intense. After the ultrasound, up to her birth, were possibly the hardest several months of my life. Like, she had an expiration date, and I was just waiting for that to happen. And she was moving around and being quite active in the womb. So it was like I had a relationship with her, but I knew we'd never get to know her outside of the womb. During that time, I was still making art, and at the time I was making collages out of paint chips. And I would stand at my table, and I would cut those paint chips up and glue them down. And this extraordinary thing happened, that those moments while I was making art in this like soup of grief and fear and sorrow and hormones and my own personal illness, like I didn't feel great. I had morning sickness the entire pregnancy, and I felt awful. I mean, there's so many different levels of awful that I was going through. But when I started working with color, it was the one time of day that I would feel sort of normal. And so I got really curious about that, because I've always been an artist, but I'd never had such a marked feeling of relief from making art before, probably because I'd never suffered like that before. And doing a lot of research into it, I realized that what I was experiencing was probably like a flow state. And I'll talk more about what I think flow is all about in a later episode. After Esther was born, and I went on to have 3 miscarriages. Now, there was like 2-3 years of my life where I was pregnant or recovering from being pregnant. So it was so hard. We were raising a toddler too, and then I was sick all the time and hormonal and insane, and we finally decided to stop. One of the reasons why I'm talking so frankly about my pregnancy losses is that it's been my experience that there's kind of a cultural taboo around it. 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in miscarriage, however. So miscarriage is something that happens a lot, and let me tell you folks, it sucks. It's different. Losing a full-term baby and having a miscarriage are 2 totally different things. It's kind of like breaking an arm versus losing an arm. And I'm just talking about my own experience. You can't really quantify pain. It all sucks though. let me make that clear. None of it's fun or easy. For women that are choosing to have kids, these are things that come up: infertility, miscarriage, infant loss, and it's like a bomb goes off in your life when these things occur. So when I was going through all this hard stuff, I also had a solo show scheduled. So I started to make some work around losing Esther and the pregnancy. I made these jars that I called preserves, where I submerged various objects in resin. And I also made some needlepoint and a few other things that sort of commemorated this extremely difficult time. And a friend of mine asked me if the work was cathartic. And I always thought cathartic was, well, like a release or a relief. And I was kind of like, I don't really think, it didn't feel cathartic. It didn't feel like, oh, I've made these jars and now I feel so much better. Or I've made these needle points with extremely disturbing Bible verses on them and I feel way better. No, I did not feel better. But being a big fan of word meanings and etymologies, I looked up the word catharsis because I was kind of curious. And it turns out the word catharsis is a medical term and it means to poop. So if you have a cathartic experience, it means you got some poop out of you. This brings me to my point, possibly my mission in life. And that is, on one hand, we have absolute shit. We have sorrow and grief and rape and murder and disease and fires and everything awful. And then on the other hand, we have art and butterflies and babies and flowers and selfless acts of heroism. These 2 things, though I would love it if this whole human experience, the tragic human experience, was eliminated, that we didn't have to deal with that, the fact that they are both always with us, hand in hand, at tension, elevates the beauty. And what it makes me feel personally is that I want to take whatever gifts or opportunities that are given to me, and I want to absolutely exploit them. I want to take as many risks as possible to get the best message that I can into the world. So when I was preparing for this, thinking about what I wanted to talk about, I, had this strong impression of somebody who is just feeling beat up. Like they've just been kind of in captive to the sorrows of whatever tragedy they went through or are going through. And it's super trite to say like, well, there's hope, because I know what it's like when you're going through that stuff and it doesn't feel like there's hope and it doesn't feel like things are going to get better. Even in those moments, there is shocking and remarkable beauty and mercy and love. If you want to see some of my videos, check out my Instagram, and please tell me your story, because connection is another thing that really brings us hope and solace. Thanks for watching, guys.